Well, hello everyone. My name is Honor Iosif, and I'm the Communications Director for an organisation called AROSE, which stands for Australian Remote Operations for Space and Earth. So just to give you a little bit of a background on what that all means, Australia has a really strong reputation for remote operations, which is when we manage, monitor and control things remotely. So I think most people listening today would be familiar with this in mining, where we see the big autonomous trucks and the trains being used, and where people can be operating equipment thousands of kilometres away, or maybe even in a control centre that's actually on site. But we also use remote operations in other areas as well, including in agriculture and healthcare, defence, energy, and really exciting space. And that's where AROSE comes into things. We're talking about taking Australia's remote operations technology, research and expertise and applying it for applications in space. And on the other side of that, we're also taking the learnings and technologies we get from space and applying them back to Earth. So a lot of everyday things that we already use come from space missions. In fact, I can almost guarantee everyone listening now has at least one piece of tech on them, if not right this minute, but definitely they've used it today, that originated from tech that was developed for space travel. So I'm going to do an experiment and see how many people have recently taken a selfie or photo today with their phone. And I'm assuming that a few people are nodding here. Well, the camera in your phone uses tech developed to create cameras that were small enough for spacecraft. And so other things that we also use today include your computer mouse, wireless headsets, ear thermometers, CAT scans, LEDs, and even athletic shoes, most likely are using technology that NASA developed for their suits. So that's a little bit about what AROSE is all about, bringing together Earth and space technology, the research, all the expertise that we have, and making our industries better. We make our planet better. We're able to go and explore space, and we're also able to have a positive impact, I guess, on how we work and live and play, not just now, but also into the future. I think the thing that for me is most exciting about digital solutions and technology is the impact that it has and it can make on our lives, and how it can make things better for people, our communities, and our planet. And there's an example that I really love which shows how this can all come together. And it's really in something as simple as encouraging people to go to the park and to use, green public spaces during summer. So, it's really hot and people just love to stay in their air conditioning. So in one state, to get around this problem, local councils in metropolitan and regional areas worked together to monitor in real time the temperature in their parks and playgrounds. And they also monitored the levels of moisture in the soil. So they put sensors around the park to gather all this data, and then that was fed back to all the councils via satellite networks. And so all that real-time temperature data of how hot it was in the park was then put on a public website where people could go and they could see which local parks or playgrounds were coolest at any time during the day, to try and encourage people to go out and not be deterred by the hot weather. And then they also used the information they gathered about the moisture levels in the soil. They analysed it, and that helped them to make better decisions about their watering practices. So that, water and those other resources that we don't want to waste, instead they're being used where they're most needed. And just in that one little example, you can see how these technologies can impact our communities, they can impact on people, they can impact how we use our resources, can help make our planet better and help us to use things more wisely. Yeah, and that for me is what's really exciting about digital technologies and solutions. It can impact us in really positive ways. In other areas, it's helping keep workers safe in really dangerous jobs. It's creating engaging ways for people to learn and to study and to train for jobs even. It's helping businesses, to be making better decisions and to be more efficient. And we've talked about using resources. And, in the last 2 years, how important has digital technology been to us just to keep us all connected, you know? How important has it been that we can still reach out to somebody through digital technologies or use telehealth and those sorts of things? So, and I guess finally, working for AROSE, these sorts of things are helping us to go into space and learn more about our universe, which is, again, really exciting. Firstly is that sometimes we forget people, and it would be not to forget the people, because there's no point, you know, having a wonderful solution to a problem if no one knows how to use it. Or it's so complicated and so user unfriendly that no one actually wants to use it. So, you know, when people are developing solutions, you think about who's going to use this technology or solution, you know, and what skills are they going to need to use it? And will you need to train them to use it? And is it accessible? If you're building a solution and that requires people to use a computer, well, do the people you're actually wanting to help, do they have access to a computer? And if they don't, well, then you have to start thinking, how do we get them that access? Or do you need to think of a completely different solution? And I think in terms of accessibility, you know, it's even more important these days that we think about people with disabilities or people from maybe non-English speaking backgrounds. You know, if you're working with somebody trying to solve a problem for a community that doesn't speak English or for people who can't read, you know, you need to design those things into your solutions. Maybe it's with graphics or voiceovers or some other means. But at all times, I think the biggest challenge is not getting so excited about the technology that you forget that at some point a person or a group of people are going to have to need to interact with that technology to use your solution. And I guess another consideration is that you've got to be prepared to test and refine, go back, test and refine, test and refine, test, and really not get discouraged. Because, you know, it's really rare that things work the first time around, you know, particularly with digital technology. And, you know, earlier on I had an issue with my computer and I've been using that for a long time. And so first time around, it's really rare that things work the first time. And sometimes, you know, you have to combine a solution with an already existing piece of technology. And, you know, there can be issues around compatibility that you really need to think about. And you have to be prepared, I guess, to spend time working through those issues. And I guess like any new idea, you have to be prepared to experiment, find out what works, find out what doesn't work, and really take that time and not get discouraged in trying to achieve your goal. Because, you know, there will probably be failures along the way. That will be normal. But it's just important to keep going and don't get discouraged by setbacks. Yes, so there absolutely is more to digital technologies or solutions than just apps and websites. And I guess for me, working with remote operations, the first things that come to mind are the use of drones and robots and sensor technologies. You know, particularly robots, you know, they come in all different shapes and sizes. They're not just little humanoid shapes with happy faces. They come in all shapes and sizes and can perform lots of different types of tasks, especially in the tasks that are, you know, those dull and repetitive things, or that need to be done in dangerous or really hard to access environments. And this means that workers, you know, don't have to be put at risk, or they don't have to do tasks that are boring or cause them to get fatigued. And that's, you know, when accidents happen. Yes, when people start getting bored and they start losing attention, that's when accidents happen. So we can use robots to take people away from those sort of boring tasks and those risks. And they can be used to check equipment in areas, for example, like a toxic environment where there might be gases or chemicals and it's not safe for people to go into. We can also monitor and perform tasks on offshore platforms, for example, with robots. And these are really dangerous environments for people to work in, so it helps with worker safety. Robots, there are small robots that can crawl through, you know, little pipes and check for cracks or leaks in equipment, which, you know, to help prevent breakdowns or accidents. You know, if there's a gas leak somewhere, that could be a really major accident. And they've also been used to monitor for security reasons. And even recently I saw robots in some countries being used to sanitize hospital wards and public transport, really taking people out of harm's way and from stopping people having to suit up in all that gear with COVID and things. So I think robots are a really interesting option in some cases. And then there's also drones, where I think particularly agriculture has some really interesting examples of how drones are helping solve problems and make things more efficient, I guess, with agriculture. They gather data, they map and they survey huge areas of land. And all that data can help farmers make more informed decisions, and they can make predictions, around when should I use fertilizer? Do I need to use more fertilizer? How do I irrigate? My watering schedules. When should I rotate my crops? And what are the best times for planting seeds and things? And livestock farmers can obviously monitor their livestock. And someone, if livestock goes missing, they can help find it. Which makes, I think, drones can really help make life a lot easier for farmers as well. And just on drones, I also think with bushfires, we've had some devastating bushfires in Australia, and drones can be used to track the movement of bushfires so that emergency services can be deployed to areas quicker, so that they can know which areas they need to get to. And it helps with faster response, which is really a really valuable asset when you think of the devastation that we've had recently. And before that, they can be used to prevent fires. So with dry matter, if you can survey areas and find where all that dry matter is building up, or that fuel that's going to start a fire, if you can get to that before it happens, that's another way of preventing these fires. I've got some others as well. Aside from drones and robots, wearable technology devices are really interesting as well. And I think these have a particular significance in healthcare, where people can wear devices that monitor their vital signs related to a particular issue they have. And you can collect data from that device, relay it back to a control centre. And in some cases, it's actually artificial intelligence that analyses this data, and it lets doctors or nurses or other healthcare professionals know, hey, this person needs to go to a hospital. We need to change their treatment. They need to change their medication. They need to do something different because the vital signs are showing that maybe their condition is deteriorating. When you think about that, for me, I think that has a real impact on the quality of life for people, particularly with these chronic long-term health conditions, where a lot of them, unless they had this sort of technology, you'd be stuck in a hospital, which is not very pleasant. And, now they can be at home, they can go about daily activities, and they just get help when they need it. And it's great for hospitals as well, because they're freeing up beds for people who really need to be in a hospital environment instead of just somebody who needs to be constantly monitored. And if you can bear with me, my favourite, which I've left to last, which I find really exciting, is virtual and augmented reality options. This is something that I really wish was around when I was growing up and studying. The applications for virtual reality and augmented reality for learning and training people, that's really exciting for me. It gives people, that opportunity just to experience, I guess, something as close as possible to the real thing, as if that object was really there, or as if they were really in that environment. And when you think about training, what a great tool for training someone. particularly, for a job that, a slight accident might mean you lose a toe or a finger. If you can practice and make mistakes without those real-world consequences, and you build up that extra layer of confidence before you go into the real thing. I think that's a great option for training people. And also I think these technologies are really engaging and entertaining and can make learning fun, and I've seen so many things where I just think, wow, I would have got that concept much easier if I had this technology. So I've seen an ordinary-looking pack of cards, and when you scan the card with your phone or some other device, the characters can come to life and they start talking to you about the role they played in history. And it's like, oh, okay, that's really interesting, talking like that person is there. Or another one that I saw recently was cards with the chemical elements on them. And when you scanned one of the cards, that element came to life and showed you all the properties of that element. And then when you combined two cards together, like hydrogen and oxygen, it showed you how those elements combine to make water. And it was just really engaging. I thought, oh, that is such a visual, easy thing to understand. And I think any way that we can make learning more engaging and interesting for people, especially, those people that find reading large amounts of text really difficult for whatever reasons, these technologies, if they inspire people to learning, well, then that's a huge benefit, I think, for everybody. So I think that was some of the issues that I talked about earlier, is that sometimes we get so caught up in the technology, we forget why we're developing something, or we forget who we're developing it for. And so just always to keep in mind, I guess, that original goal and who you're developing it for. So what you're developing, like I was saying, is it accessible to the people? Is it right for the group that you're developing? What do you need to change about it? What other devices will it need to work with? Will it need to talk to some other device, and how is that going to work as well? So I think that would be some of the areas, like I was talking before, and that whole concept that you have to allow time for things to be tested. Sometimes just that tiny little piece of code can make all the difference in whether or not something works. So don't get discouraged if it doesn't work the first time. It might just be one tiny little bit of code. I think the last piece of advice for teams listening today, from me, is that idea that almost anything is possible now. We've just been talking about rovers and on the moon and operating things from Perth on the moon. So almost anything is possible. So, don't constrain your ideas, and don't think, oh, that's never been done before or anything like that. If you've got an idea, and I'm a great believer that there's no crazy ideas, if you've got an idea, no matter how crazy you think it might be, share it with your group and allow people to share their ideas without fear of being made fun of or anything, and explore those ideas with your team. Working together, collaborate together, you might not end up with the idea that you first shared, but when everybody works together, you can come up with things that are truly awesome and amazing. So I think that would be my bit of advice is think big and grand, and don't be afraid that your idea might be a little bit crazy, because I think quite a few people have had some crazy ideas and taken them quite a long way. So, I think that would be it. And I would really look forward to hearing all about the solutions that everybody comes up with in this year's challenge. I'm sure they're going to be really, really interesting and awesome.